Welcome everyone to the 6th round post-fight show for UFC Glasgow with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host Eddie Mercado, talking about this Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Gunnar Nelson fight card, which overall was a pretty good, fun night of action fights.
Yeah, it was definitely one of these overperformers where you look at the card and you might not know a lot of the talent, and especially if a lot of them are debuting. But damn it, there were so many finishes and definitely a lot of exciting fights. A few slow bouts, one like definite dud, but even the decisions were pretty close. So all in all, good night or good day.
One sub, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 KOs. I mean, and yeah, one dud fight that it's heavyweight. They're all half the time they're duds.
And one new sort of knockout that we've never seen before,
yes.
Like a weird kind of push down Olay thing that we'll talk about.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. That was the other thing too, is that there weren't any like TKO knockouts. I guess the Leslie Smith swarming Amanda Lemos and Lemos just being out on her feet. Everything else was like out cold out. Like, is that guy dead? He might be dead. I don't know. Is Paul Craig dead now? Did we lose Paul Craig? Because
man, and the thing is, I feel like the referees did a really good job on stopping the fights in time.
Yeah,
it wasn't even that. It was just the ground strikes tonight were extra heavy, extra brutal.
Yeah, there were a lot of really, really hard shots delivered. So also on that note, a lot of really bad nights for the Scottish fans out there. Man, did they get clobbered. Not that Gunnar Nelson is a Scotsman, but he, being the European fighter and the adopted son of Ireland at this point, man, he everybody went cold in that main event when he got knocked out. Like, I had people tweeting me from the arena being like, people are just getting out of here as quick as they can. They don't want to put the post-fight speech. They don't want to see replays, anything.
Yeah, I'm sure they were definitely upset. I mean, the boos were nonstop for anyone who beat anyone that was Scottish, except for Paul Felder.
But so I got to give credit to Conor. I don't want to do that. Not Conor McGregor. He gives all his own credit, so I don't need to give him anything. But Conor Rebish,
his own praises.
Yeah, Conor Rebish, I got to give him credit because he called Ponzinibbio in this fight. And I knew, anybody who's seen enough Gunnar Nelson fights knew that Gunnar Nelson would eat some shots standing. I just did not think that Ponzinibbio would be the dude to finally melt him.
Yeah, Conor definitely, it was a little bit of a spite pick, but yeah, he nailed it. Ponzinibbio just had too much power. And what was crazy is Nelson came out and he threw those uppercuts right off the bat. And I was like, oh shit, maybe Nelson isn't outgunned here like I thought he might have been. But holy shit, Ponzinibbio was like, all right, enough of this. I'm just going to mollywop you and put you on some skates and then just drop you again and put you out cold with some ground strikes.
Well, and that's the thing is that Nelson, he has been, his timing, his sense of distance, his variety, especially with his hands, has gotten better over time. Like, he's become a slicker offensive striker, I think. But as Conor brought up, he's ridiculously ridiculously hittable for an elite level. And that hadn't cost him before. He got knocked down once by, what's his name? Rick Story. But he'd never been knocked out before. But you can't be that hittable forever and just have it never cost you ever. And this time it did.
Especially with his style. He really keeps his hands low. He really has that karate style without any of like the typical karate movements that you see from the guys who implement that style. It's just not him. Like, he's out there bouncing and all that, which seems super ineffective, and I'm not sure why he does it. It seems like he burns gas doing it. But man, he just got blitzed. It's like he wasn't ready kind of situation.
Yeah. So big credit for Ponzinibbio. That's a win that firmly establishes him as a guy to get more top 10 fights in the division. I mean, welterweight needs some turnover. They need some new faces up there to get big fights. Ponzinibbio now, one of those guys, a dude I had kind of pegged as like a gatekeeper to the top 15, somebody who just didn't quite have the speed, didn't quite have the chin to really make it at the elite. He's turned that corner. His boxing has gotten a lot more technical, and as hard as he hits and as well-rounded as he is, that makes him tough to take on. So,
yeah, and he's exciting. He's an action fighter. Like, he's coming to bang. And if you're not ready for it, you might be going to sleep.
Yeah. So I'm definitely excited to see what he can do next. Just excited to see how he matches up with people going up the division.
Especially like the wrestlers, the guys that can threat the takedown and throw some hands. That's what I'm ready to see.
Yeah, but if they just happen to somehow, for some reason, throw him in a fight with Jorge Masvidal at some point, I'd be okay with that.
Masvidal's hittable. Like, I think
it'd be fun. Like,
yes,
that's the kind of new blood you need at the top of the division. You need somebody who can get in there and is going to be a fun fight for other dudes that have already established themselves. So
yeah.
I like that fight a lot. Before that, Cynthia Calvillo got a solid win over Joanne Calderwood. It's one of those, like, you won. A lot of people picked you to win. I thought she'd win this fight. She even won it a lot landing standing up, which is good for her. But it's also kind of a pump the brakes win, where it's like, there was way too much ineffective activity in that fight to see her, like, the UFC trying to really push her up this division in a hurry. And if she gets in there with somebody like Claudia Gadelha or Carolina Kowalkiewicz or Jessica Andrade, anytime too soon, that could be a bad thing.
Man, someone just texted me that Gunnar Nelson is a bum. Gunnar Nelson is not a bum. He got caught and just needs to develop some defense.
He's always been hittable. He's still one of the best wrestlers and grapplers in that division, and that is one of the deepest divisions in MMA. Like,
absolutely. But yeah, Calvillo, she just looked like right off the bat that she was not comfortable standing up. Like, she looked like she knew she was facing a better striker. Mm-hmm. But she still gutted it out, and she was really landing her left hook, over the second half of that fight. And I believe that's what busted JoJo's nose open. Mm-hmm. And also the reason I scored that second round for Calvillo, because she was doing the damage.
Yep. Yeah, I scored it for Calderwood, but it was a close run thing. I got no problem with anybody who scored it for Calvillo. The big thing I think what ended up happening in this fight is Calvillo, she's got good footwork. She's obviously a good athlete. But she's really, she's developing her sense of range and her sense of striking. And that's a slow process. Like, that takes a lot of time. And she's getting better at it. But in this fight, you had somebody who still doesn't have a great sense of range, but is much faster than their opponent, against somebody who is more practiced, but is slow enough to the point that she just can't catch up to that speed difference.
And it's only going to get more dramatic as she moves up the ladder.
Yeah.
But there still are some fights there that I think she's going to have a good time doing. Like,
I mean, Calderwood can still mix it up with people like Felice Herrig and, some of the other good established veteran talents in that division. It's just, and if they open a 125 division, she'll have a whole new crop of fights to make. She's a fun action fighter. People like her. I'm not seeing her going away from the UFC. It's just, there's an athleticism end point at which Calderwood is just a step too slow for good athletes in the division.
Yeah, and Calderwood missed weight here, which is she I think they said this on the broadcast, but she should definitely probably fight at 125.
Yeah. She should be at 125. I'll still show up for her fights. She's still fun, but the UFC needs to think of her as more like an action talent to book against other veteran women fighters who like to brawl, rather than somebody to test out your young rising prospect super athletes.
Yeah, for sure. Because then we get fights like this, which wasn't exactly exciting. It was competitive and it mattered, but kind of low on the fun.
All right, before that, Paul Felder, Stevie Ray. Man, I like Stevie Ray. I've got a lot of fondness for him. He was, one of the first people I interviewed a long time ago. I really like him, but he made a terrible tactical decision in this fight. Like, I saw him start wrestling, and I was like, I don't think that's going to do him any favors out there. Like, Felder is hard to take down. And then when it was all stuck in like 50-50 clinch exchanges, Paul Felder is just too violent when you give him that much time to hang out in the clinch.
That's exactly what it was. When I saw Stevie shoot in, I was like, damn, he's going to get tired. Like, you're not going to take Felder down. Like, he just doesn't have, he's not built like that. Stevie isn't. Like, he's not this imposing wrestler figure that's going to, grind on Paul Felder. Like, it's just not going to happen. It was crazy because Felder, he had his back to the cage and he realized he was cut, and he wipes his eye and he's like, damn it. And then right away just got pissed off, circled out, tie plum, knee to the face, brutal ground and pound elbows, and it was a wrap. It was like Ray messed up by cutting Felder. That was the downfall. Yeah,
I mean, Paul Felder, the thing with Felder is that he's never the most like tactical moment-to-moment thinking fighter who's like, you give him a really technical clinch exchange, he's not the most technical guy inside the clinch. But you give him a bunch of time to hang out there and think of something he wants to do, he's got a big, deep arsenal of tricks to pull from and a ton of power. He's super tough. And Ray, like, the physicality was kind of 50-50 in the clinch. Like, Ray wasn't getting way out muscled. It's just that he couldn't land anything, and he was giving Felder a ton of time to think of, like, well, what I want to land this knee. How do I make this knee happen? Okay, I'll maneuver here, and then bam, there it is. And on the ground was, Ray was out when he hit the mat, woke back up, and then got knocked out again for his trouble. So,
you think Ray should have came out with a more volume approach and tried to?
No, I think Ray had the right idea from his, from the Lozon and Pearson fights of stay on your back foot, circle away, let Felder chase you right into big left hands. I mean, Pearson was able to pick Felder off by just making Felder chase him right into hooks and, slip and be elusive. Felder's got a real problem with this robotic sort of chasing footwork where he doesn't throw nearly enough. And Ray has that game. Like, he's won those fights, but that wasn't what he wanted to do here. And, I also had questions about his footwork being clean enough to keep that game up against somebody like Felder, who's a little more polished moving forward than Lozon or Pearson. But anyway, big win for Felder. I think the big fallout for this is that Felder, now 33, now having had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fights in the UFC, has actually reestablished himself as the top level action fighter that he was supposed to be when they threw him at Edson Barboza 3 fights into his UFC stint.
Yeah, Barboza was way too much, way too soon.
Yeah.
Felder is dangerous. Like, who wants to sign up to fight that guy?
Yeah. And I think he's gotten the time. He's had he's been in the game 6 years now. He's had the time to really let his style form up, get a little tighter, get more comfortable. And he's now a much more complete, dangerous fighter that can compete at a high level at lightweight.
Yeah, he's got potential. And I've always been a fan of Felder.
Yeah.
Like, just his style alone, just the brutality of it. It's just fun to watch. Like, it's so Muay Thai. I love it. So, exciting stuff from him.
Yep. Good fight for him to reestablish himself probably as a top 15 lightweight. For that, Jack Marshman beat Ryan James, and it wasn't a bad fight in, it wasn't no fun. But, man, did it just, you can't watch that fight and be like, Marshman and James, they're going places. It was just kind of like.
It's so true. It's like, so for each fight, I either put down it's good or eh. And for this one, I put okay. because it had some exciting moments when James kind of let his chin out there to be hit, and Marshman would land some really heavy hooks, and then kind of like a lot of nothingness, and then some more hooks, and then a momentum swing late. So it had some excitement, but overall it was just kind of meh. Okay, not great, not terrible, but
James really screwed with Marshman's game early by staying on his back foot and staying away from him. James, prior to this fight, has almost always been a guy who just kind of runs forward after people with his chin out, throwing. And he stayed on his back foot, made Marshman chase him, which Marshman didn't have the footwork to keep up with and do very well. He still landed shots. He still won rounds doing it because James is not a good fighter off his back foot. But it kept Marshman from being very effective. And then and then James at the end switches it up and comes forward, and suddenly Marshman's like, oh God, too big a shift in style.
And especially in the way Marshman was fighting, I mean, he really left it out there in the first round. Like, he was really going for it, really winging it, and he was pretty fucking tired there at the third, which let James back into it.
Yeah. So Marshman gets a win. It was a stylistic matchup that was always going to work for him, but it did not look like he made it hard on himself, and it doesn't look – it's hard to watch that and be like, Marshman's going to make a run, you know.
No, he was the heaviest betting favorite on this card at like minus 600, and this was not a minus 600 performance.
No, it was not. All right. Before that, light heavyweight bout, Khalil Roundtree, Paul Craig. Man.
Wow. This has me questioning the chin of Craig.
Well, I mean, Craig is he's always been kind of like Gunnar Nelson without the wrestling, where
just the subs
and some offense, some like better than you expect offense, some unexpected power, but amazingly hittable, like just there to be blasted. And unfortunately, as he gets into the UFC and you get guys who are just hulking light heavyweights with a ton of power, people are making him pay for it a lot, you know?
I'm worried that's not really going to change too much.
I mean,
light heavyweight is a tough division.
It's hard to see a guy get flatlined that hard at light heavyweight and then think of him going back out there and, you know, facing somebody even like Devin Clark, you know, he's not the best light heavyweight in the world, but he's a massive dude who hits like a truck.
Yeah, you know? Which is kind of the story for a lot of light heavyweights.
Yeah. So it's a bad loss for Craig. I know, you know, I didn't actually see I was tweeting and typing at the time. I didn't actually see the whole thing with Roundtree standing over him and all that, which I realized got Roundtree a ton of hate after that. It was just the timeline was like flooded with.
Yeah, it was. I didn't like it. I thought it was a little cheap. I mean, the dude's like a school teacher. Like, what are you doing, man? You're gonna stand over him? At first, I thought he was just checking on him to make sure he was okay. But then I'm like, he's actually being a dickhead. Like, what's that about? Like, maybe there's something I don't know going on behind the scenes between them.
Well,
like,
Craig's, you know, he's one of those dudes that anytime you hear him, anytime you hear what he has to say, it's never like he's always full of confidence, and he's got that British sort of, you know, super, I'm going to put out a ton of pre-fight trash talk to really get to my opponent. And maybe that just got to Roundtree a little extra. I don't know. Either way, I mean, Roundtree, the thing is it like, it's kind of like if Derrick Lewis actually had a technical foundation to go with his massive power, where like Roundtree learning just a little bit of patience that he's showing in fights like this makes him so much more dangerous fighter than he was.
Yeah, and this is back-to-back brutal knockouts for him. Even though the first one was illegal, like let's stop pretending that second knee wasn't illegal because it was. But he's got talent, and if he can keep his head in the game, I think you know he can make some waves being as athletic as he is, as long as he continues to grow and really work on his technical skills.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, Paul Craig, this is really, So he didn't really do anything in this fight except for a few naked kicks that I think were blocked. But I can't even.
That's the exact reason too that he's there to be hit as hard as he is. Like his chin may not be that bad, but when your big, like your first offensive tool is to jump into the pocket behind naked low kicks, you are setting yourself up to get cracked fight after fight.
And it's almost as if he's expecting to get hit. Like
Yeah.
he starts backing up a little bit and starts covering up and like almost bracing for the impact instead of being offensive. And he just doesn't have that sort of striking game. Like I'm worried about if he'll be around for much longer, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, it's a couple of bad losses, and his UFC run may be ending in a hurry. For that heavyweight bout, Justin Willis beat James Mulheron. This fight, it sucks.
Boo.
It is not going to impress any fans, except that I will say that I actually liked what I saw out of Justin Willis out of this.
It was smart.
Honestly. Like for a guy who is he was 4-1 coming into this bout.
Yeah,
he had barely fought at all, and against by far the most difficult opposition that he's faced in Mulheron, which is saying something. I mean, that just, like Justin Willis, the dudes he's been fighting are not. Mulheron was definitely better than them. And Willis looked controlled. He looked calm. He just really easily breezed through winning a fight against somebody who maybe is a little more technical than him standing. And that's a good sign.
And with more experience also.
Yeah.
You know what? He was very composed and he was well paced, but he didn't do anything of substance in it as far as landing big shots or doing anything to make a highlight about or anything to draw any kind of interest outside of he didn't fuck up.
Yeah.
So
it was a prospect getting rounds, which from a scouting perspective, I'm happy to see. But from a fans looking for the next big star perspective,
or a promoter's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, Justin Willis will likely be on the Fight Pass prelim in the near future.
Yeah, definitely shouldn't have been on the main card.
Before that, welterweight bout, Danny Roberts, Bobby Nash. Man, Bobby Nash seems like one of those fighters who, he got to the UFC with a style that he did not actually have the technical depth to maintain, and is now having a lot of trouble trying to rebuild.
Yeah, he gives me a Jared Rosholt feel.
Yeah,
but it does have some boxing experience. Does have a nice overhand right. But
it's the thing. He got to the UFC as a power boxer. It wasn't like he was out there wrestling dudes in his early career. He was out there striking with dudes, and he's got a wrestling background. But now in the UFC, it's something you're not that good a boxer, and he hasn't been he hasn't been wrestling people either. So now suddenly that wrestling game that was sort of oh well, I've got it in the back pocket, doesn't mean that much.
Especially when it becomes your forefront and your go-to, and then that's really. And I mean, he might be another guy that might not be around for long. I mean, he got absolutely hurt in this one. That was brutal. That cross, what was a southpaw, or was it it was an overhand?
It was an overhand left.
Yeah.
And it was set up early in the first round. Nash was throwing a bunch of kicks from range. That was a new wrinkle for him. He'd added a bunch of kicking, a bunch of range kicking to his boxing game, which was not a bad thing to see, but he's throwing a bunch of kicks from range, and Roberts hit him square across the midsection with a body kick that he was not braced for at all, with a left round kick. And it had Nash, he doubled over and winced from it briefly. And then in the second round, Roberts comes in, and it's that classic Crow Cop thing where your chamber for the left round kick and the chamber for the overhand left are the exact same, and Nash leaned into the kick, and Roberts caught him with the left hook.
It was pretty. It
Yeah.
was definitely pretty. I thought he was out from that punch alone. The hammer fist that followed up were pretty unnecessary.
Yeah. So it's a pretty, it's a good reminder too that, for as elite an athlete and as huge a powerhouse as Mike Perry is, Roberts went deep into that fight with Perry. That was a war. And
that was a war. He ate some heavy shots in that.
Yeah. So Roberts is a tough dude. He's not the most, he's not the most the best athlete in the division, but he's tough. He hits hard. He's got a technical game to work on. And as he keeps going, he can build himself to being a, pretty interesting action fighter in that division.
And he shut down the takedown in the second round, which, ultimately I think is what kind of made Nash like, man, I can't get the takedown. I can't hit him. Like, what do I do? And then bam, I get knocked out. That's what I do.
So it's a great performance from Roberts. Nice to see. Look forward to seeing him in more action fights at welterweight. And that brings us to a flyweight bout. Alexander Pantoja versus Neil Seery. It's made me a little bit sad. I wanted to see Seery get that win.
Yeah, I love seeing guys retire on a win. That's like one of my favorite things in MMA to see, outside of brutal knockouts and wicked submissions, of course. But a guy going out on a win, that's just beautiful to me. And he really was so game in this fight. Like, he really did his very best, but it just wasn't enough. Pantoja was just too smart going into that third round. He's like, I got this guy ready to bang it out. Yep. Psych, I'm taking you down and getting that submission.
Yeah, Pantoja's a great slick sub grappler. And, I think Seery it didn't happen fast enough for him to win either of the first two rounds, but he was slowly turning the tide in the boxing game, where his toughness and his ability to step in to the pocket time after time after time with hard combinations was wearing on Pantoja. By the end of that second round, it was like he's starting to tilt it. I thought it would happen over the second round, and he might win the second and continue on to the third. That was my hope. And
he might have stolen that second round. I mean, he was really turning it up at the end, finishing his combos with his left hook that was landing.
Yep. And then Pantoja was just like, okay, well, take him down, choke him out.
You know what? I wonder if that was Pantoja's own sort of game plan, or was it his coaches in between the rounds saying, hey, now we're going to go in and we're going to put him on his ass.
I think it might also just have been frustration from Seery, just staying forward on him. Like, just, he looked, when he shot in, he looked frustrated. He looked like he was tired of getting hit by Neil Seery constantly marching forward on him. So it may have just been out of frustration, just like, man, I am tired of this dude not going away. I got to try something different.
And that's the thing, is Seery was eating some shots. Those knees he was taking to the body in the clinch, holy shit. I'm surprised he didn't get finished by that. They were brutal.
If nothing else, I will say, even if Seery couldn't go out on a win, I'm happy he didn't go out on a KO loss, because that's always the worst thing to see. And I'm happy that Pantoja continues to establish himself as a top flyweight, because the UFC needs more guys in that division to establish any kind of win streak, track record, ability to hang at all. So Pantoja...
I'm really curious how they're going to match him up after this.
Yeah. I don't know that Pantoja's at all ready to compete with the guys in the top, in the top 7 or 8. But he can mix it up, and he's a good athlete. He's fast. He's a good grappler, and he's there to be, he's the kind of flyweight that can fight hard and can scramble well for 15 minutes, which is like the bottom end requirement that honestly a lot of dudes, even at 125, a lot of dudes fail that.
It is the prerequisite to get into the upper echelons at 125. But maybe he's ready for like John Moraga or someone like that.
He could be in a fight with John Moraga or somebody like that, or Dustin Ortiz, somebody that's, had some success climbing, but has still just not quite been able to break in as a real elite flyweight. Pantoja's ready for those kind of bouts.
Or even Ian McCall, if he still fights.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ian McCall's just this, phantom figure in the rafter. Like, you catch a sight of him in the rafters, and then he's gone. He's more of a legend at this point than anything.
He's a myth.
Yep.
The myth that is Ian McCall.
All right, before that, welterweight bout, Galore Bufando, Charlie Ward. Man, you know, like, I get Charlie Ward he's Conor McGregor's bodyguard. He got into the UFC off a 3-1 record in ways that just make no sense outside of him being Conor McGregor's bodyguard. So I get that there's like a little bit of fan, you know, clap back from that, a little bit of hate on that. That's just not. But I feel bad for Charlie Ward because he is just getting sunned by other really inexperienced dudes that just need somebody to make a highlight on.
Hey, but he can say he's a UFC fighter, so well, there's that.
After today, I don't know that he can say that.
He might get one more. He might get one more, but holy shit. What the fuck did we see here? Like, this dude, he almost knocked himself out. Like, it was like he almost pulled a Gray Maynard. Like, it was right there, but the credit has to go to Bufando.
Bufando legit grabbed him by the face and threw him on his face hard enough that he knocked him out.
I've never seen a knockout like that's like something you see in a YouTube street fight.
Yeah,
you don't see that in elite UFC MMA like that.
No, I'm just like, before this fight, I pitched Bufando as this like hyper inexperienced, funkified Tony Ferguson Uriah Hall matchup.
With the dash of Bruce Leroy.
Yeah, with the dash of Bruce Leroy. And I'm glad that that's the dude that showed up. Like, I would hate to say that and then have him just, like, lose this grinding, boring... Well, then it'd be Uriah Hall. But but he really, like... I hope the UFC can do him right as a fighter. Because, like, somebody brought up, like, I think he's already 35. He's athletic as hell, hyper inexperienced. Just find the most fun, ridiculous, weirdo action fights you can get this dude in and put him in those. Like, we don't need Galore Bufando title run. We just need him to, like, stick around and be in a bunch of fun wars.
And his name is so much fun. Like, his name's Galore. Are you kidding me? Super exciting. Super exciting. And I feel like he even used a little bit of that traditional martial arts philosophy of using your opponent's momentum against them.
A ton of it.
Face plant.
Dude, like, you know, he reminds me of like Emanuel Newton, but a hyper athletic Emanuel Newton in terms of like when you hear him in the post fight interview and all that, and he's talking about like secret training and stuff like
they
that.
They probably hang out. Those guys hang out together for sure. Talk about like space and.
Just that sort of spaced out kind of weirdo, but really buys heavily into his martial arts philosophy, and I love it. I hope all the success for him, you know?
We got to also mention Charlie Ward's absolutely abysmal fucking tattoo.
We don't have to.
I have to. Like, I just couldn't get over that. I'm like, did you really do like he went to the tattoo artist, and the artist is like, what do you want? And Ward's like, you ever seen me in the clips? And tattoo artist is like, I got you, fam. Say no more. It was really bad. It was really bad. It made me root against him.
I know. I feel for Charlie Ward because he's, you know, he's kind of a charity case off of Conor McGregor's shine, and then he's a highlight reel. Like, that's no way to live your life, you know?
Hey, you gotta feed the monkey.
I know. Okay, fine. All right, before that, Danny Henry, Daniel Tamer. I don't know what the judges were seeing in this fight to score at 29-28, but I have, like, this to me was a blatant case for only 10-8 rounds. Like, Tamer had Henry absolutely dead to rights in round one. Just landing every big shot, hurting him over and over again. He ate a few shots coming back, but Henry was he was getting blasted in that first round.
It was a little tough to watch, honestly.
Yeah, it was just a shit kicking. And then the rest of the fight was Henry taking over because Tamor could not imagine a way to fight that wasn't just him pouring his gas tank all over the cage. Like, he fights like a young Nikita Krylov when he was just getting to the UFC, and he's just like, I'll just pour my gas tank all over myself and light that shit on fire, and we'll fight from there.
Yeah, on top of just getting discouraged from like throwing your best at this guy, connecting, and no results, like nothing. The dude just ate him and kept coming forward like a Darren Elkins or something crazy. But I was pissed at this fight, man. I was a little upset with Henry. He could have got the finish there in the third. And
I know.
What does he do? He shoots in and gets the takedown and kills everyone's buzz, blue balls.
I think that's honestly, that's all game built on fighting in South Africa. Like, fighting on a regional scene where you have an ability to like be this such a physical dominant, like, people are just so unstructured that like getting that kind of takedown would have just been an instant sub for him. And it's just, that's kind of how his game is built. Henry's game is kind of built on the idea that like people just can't fight him. Man,
it really pissed me off because I really think he could have got the finish.
The weirdest thing is, though, that both these dudes think they're featherweights. Like, this was a welterweight fighting a bantamweight, and likely both of them are going to try to drop to 145 after this, and somebody in Tamer's corner just needs to be like, dude, you're 5'5". Nobody is 5'5" over... Even at 135, I can't think of anybody who's 5'5" at 135. Like,
featherweight has some really tall motherfuckers rolling around. Like, and I'll tell you this much: they're way, way tougher than Danny Henry is. Yeah, maybe not as tough as Dan Henry, because this motherfucker,
but they're much more complete fighters.
Way more complete. Yeah, way more dangerous.
Yeah,
Henry almost won me over as a fan, but he gets put into a guy I'm going to root against for next time. I hate to say it, but
yeah, it's just for Henry. Like, as you're 6 feet tall and you're going to eat every punch people throw at you, and most dudes are going to be a lot more controlled than David Tamor. They're just going to light you up slowly over 3 rounds rather than just throwing every single shot they can at you in round 1 and then hoping that they can coast out the fight from there.
And they'll probably have a lot more reach than Tamor did. That's for damn sure.
And a lot, maybe even better wrestling. Although, honestly, Tamor, his wrestling and grappling wasn't that much of a problem. It's just him getting exhausted that was the big problem.
Yeah.
He was dead on his feet.
I mean, when you throw everything into your shot and you don't put the guy away, gassing happens.
Henry, I'm much more excited about what Tamor can do in the future than Henry, even off this win. But Tamor should really consider going to 135, and Henry should look at not going to 145, maybe. Like, lightweight may be a safer division than featherweight for, like, if he starts cutting a bunch of weight, I worry that, like, I don't know.
Well, I worry that he's going to get slept in the worst sort of way. So regardless of what division it is, he needs to clean up his striking defense.
Yeah, he can't just be a walking punch bag. That is not a style for longevity. I mean, even with Ryan James further up the card, James had an argument for winning that fight. Like, he outlanded Marshman in round 2, unquestionably. But when you eat every shot thrown at you and it snaps your head back and you just look like you have been hit with the hardest thing imaginable, judges are not going to be kind to you. They are not going to give you rounds happily or easily.
It's like the opposite of what Benson Henderson does.
Exactly. It's the opposite of no selling. It is hyper selling every strike that lands.
Yeah, definitely not a good look.
For that bantamweight bout, Brett Johns, Albert Morales, just a dominating performance from Johns. I was actually pretty surprised. I figured Morales would have more avenues in this fight, but Johns just took it over.
He looked good. He looked really good, really complete. The way his the way he set up the entries to his takedowns was phenomenal. Like, he really had Morales convinced that they were going to stand there and trade. And then at the second Morales was like, okay, this is what we're doing, boom, Johns would change levels, get the entry, put him up against the cage. He would get the takedown. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like a Scott Holtzman, like a lighter Scott Holtzman in a way.
Much more technical fighter, much more
technical fighter, less power, but just kind of the way he throws his strikes and moves, and the way he'll get into the takedowns. Morales just really couldn't get off his back. And then the last 10 seconds, he was like trying to fall from his back. Like, what the hell are you doing?
He was just trying to get a little dignity back. That's all that was. He just wanted to show people that he was trying, at least.
I guess A for effort. But
yeah, Johns though, like, that's the thing is Johns, not the best athlete at 135, not the fastest dude, not the hardest hitter, but he has a very complete game that is made to win rounds, and you have to shut that game down to beat him. And
his moxie, he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to break.
No,
he seems a guy that's going to come out and break you. And it was good. It was dominant. I gave it a 30-25 for Johns.
He honestly, he only tends to attack on straight lines, which is a problem, but it's also something that he's turned into an actual technical part of his game, in that he's attacking on straight lines, but because he's coming in with a flurry of punches on a straight line or with a power double on a straight line, you don't know which one's coming. Like, if you brace for the power double, he's right there throwing 2 or 3 hard, fast hooks right at your face. And if you're braced to brawl with him, you see him entering, and you're like, I'm going to pick him off with a hard shot. He ducks right into a transition takedown. And that makes him, like I say, it's a style that's just built to win rounds. It is a solid, he lands a ton from guard, where, like, if you just want to hold him to you and not let him advance, he'll just beat you up there. You got to take him out of his game.
And he's busy enough with his ground volume to not get stood up.
Yep.
I'm excited. I thought it was definitely a solid win, impressive win, and over a decent competition.
Over a harder hitting, more athletic fighter, Yeah,
he schooled him.
And then that takes us to a women's bantamweight bout. Leslie Smith, Amanda Lemos. That flyweight division can't come fast enough. Lemos is a good talent, but entering the UFC against Leslie Smith was just going to be a huge task for her.
Yeah, that's no fun. Leslie Smith is tough as shit. And she'll come forward and throw everything at you.
Yeah, and Leslie Smith, she's like 5 inches taller than Lemos. Lemos is used to fighting women her size. She doesn't cut weight to get to 135. She weighs in at like 133 a lot of times for her fights. And suddenly having somebody who's not going to go away when you hit them, and who can then drag the fight into the clinch, can wear on you, can put pressure on you, can stay after you. It was tough. I mean, and credit to Lemos, she looked great for as long as her gas tank held out. She landed a ton of hard shots, ton of big leg kicks. Hurt Smith, but couldn't put her away and wasn't ready for that kind of pressure.
This fight reminded me of like a video game where you have the opponent on the easiest settings, and then you teach the person the buttons so they know all the striking buttons, but you don't teach them any of the defense. And then they just go out and like spam all the buttons. Like, that's kind of what I saw in this fight. But it was fun and it was exciting. And I love Leslie Smith, and I loved her post-fight interview. I think she killed it on the mic. She called out Betch Correa, even like said the middle finger was for her. I mean, it was cool.
I'm so mad at Dan Hardy for that, though, because she cut this great promo. She's like, middle fingers for you, Betch. And then, like, Dan Hardy's like, oh, is it something personal? Is there a backstory to this? It's like, just let the woman cut a promo. Come on. Because they're obviously, after that, she had to be like, no, I like everybody. And you're like, yeah, of course you do. You're Leslie Smith. We all know you like everybody.
Yeah, I felt Hardy was a little off with his interview questions tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, Smith, man, definitely good to see her not in some bullshit, not fighting Cyborg, not getting her ear exploded.
Yeah.
She's fun.
It was a good fight. And like I say, they get that featherweight division open, and somebody like Lemos has real talent to build on. She throws with power. She is tough as nails. Like, she was gassed to hell in that fight and was not about to go away. And the ref had to step in and save her.
Yeah. Good stoppage, though. She was definitely turning her back, and she was done.
Yeah, so she was done.
Solid stoppage.
But I just, I feel like Lemos, it can be a humbling experience for her. She can understand that there are people out there who can take her best shot and who can keep marching forward, and that she has to plan a little better. Like, it's like Daniel Tamer up above. You got to actually think about the fight you're fighting. And what if I can't knock somebody out in a round? Am I prepared to fight 2 rounds?
Yeah, and that's real. Like, learning, is your style sustainable for 3 rounds?
Yeah.
If it's not, what the fuck are you going to do if you get anywhere close to a 5-round fight?
Yep. So
solid card, though. Excellent way to kick off the card. Awesome TKO. Set the tone for the night.
Also, a good night of fights. I was eyeing this when I was breaking it down. I was like, this card is filled with a bunch of like fun, weird action fights with guys who aren't necessarily good enough to keep themselves from getting hurt really badly. Like, you see Bobby Nash on a card, you see Charlie Ward, Galore Bafando, you see Paul Craig and Khalil Roundtree on a card, and you got to be like, these people are violent, and they're not the most defensive people in the world. Yeah.
It was the perfect storm. That's what this was.
So, good fun time. A lot of great action. Sorry if you're from Scotland. This card probably sucked for you. But for the rest of us, it was fun. On that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Eddie on Twitter at TheEddieMercado. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. Give us a like, thumbs up thing over on YouTube. That helps us a ton. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all that good stuff. We will be back next week with UFC on Fox 25, Weidman versus Gastelum, and that should be a fun one. We'll have all our regular shows, Vivisection, If I Did It, Care Don't Care, Heavy Hands, all that good stuff. So tune in next time, and we will see you soon.